Welcome to another Learning Council podcast. This is your host, Leilani Cawthon, CEO of Learning Council News Media and Research. So, our topic for today is AI versus instructional excellence, crafting high quality learning experiences. And I have with me my friend, Dan Tracy. He's a leading expert in mathematics education at Mind Education. So, I'm really excited to have you with me today. I think what we want to do is we want to make sure that we talk about what's really going on in AI. So let me just start with that, okay, Dan?
Mm, yeah.
I just came off the ISTE conference, was floored by how many brand new AI companies are in the education space. This is definitely at a high wine of discussion in the education field. I mean, tons of educators trying to be trained on it and people wanting to do professional development on it and convene committees about policies around it. It's really something that's taken the market by storm. But it's not the same as what we're going to talk about today. So that's why we're calling this AI versus instructional excellence, because there's definitely a viewpoint we want to impart on our podcast today. So let's get started with that. So essentially, the question is, there's a different approach you can make within the field of building software to how the software is going to guide the mind of the student. So let's talk about that. What's the different approach that mind is taking from other, just, put a script in for AI, get
Well,
some
I mean,
stuff.
I was at ISTE as well. And like, if you were going to just like summarize ISTE, educational AI, like it was unbelievable the amount. However, like, I would say at this moment, AI, obviously you have to like categorize it, but AI in the curricular space is an incredible amount of snake oil. Like it is like crazy snake oil in the actual curriculum space. Now, like if you're like in charge of the busing and you need to create like yeah, there's incredible applications for AI, but in the actual like learning environment space, I would actually categorize the overwhelming majority of it that's just being put into educators' hands as snake oil.
And we're not being mean to snakes when we say that. We like, some people like snakes. I don't
Sure,
necessarily
but
like
like
them. I don't
when,
like
when
spiders
a
either.
curriculum company is saying, "Hey, we'll make an entire curriculum unit for you in 8 minutes," okay, well that's great. What does that mean? Like it's just an interesting space that we're in where like yeah, content can be created incredibly efficiently, but the question that nobody is asking is like so you have like high performing districts and then you have low performing districts and no one in the world and like in you're welcome to correct me would say the kids in the high performing districts are just smarter than the kids in the low performing districts. No one would say that because we all have this understanding that there's this latent potential in every single student and it is then our job to like extract that from the kids. So the question is then, well, why, they could have and we see this all the time. You have the exact same curriculum, two different districts. One's like knocking it out of the park, the other's not. So then what is the difference? And the difference is the environment or the natural learning spaces that are created in the high performing district versus the low performing district. We know this culture changes education. And so the bigger question that I would push against AI is how does AI create culture in the classroom? And I would say it doesn't. I have not seen any evidence that you've created this cultural increase in the classroom through AI. So when we talk about like natural learning environments, what we know is like so the educational process carried out by the child is not acquired by listening to words, but by experiencing the environment. And so,
Right.
what we want to try to do is actually like use AI. You can use AI or bake it into curriculum as long as it's baked in. It's not using to create the curriculum, it's used as a resource inside the curriculum to actually
I get
create
it.
spaces where kids are actually doing more. And so there's this natural need for kids to do more than they're currently doing. And
Let's talk about really, let's make sure people really understand what we're saying, because we're saying it's versus this. So let's contextualize that just a little bit. So right now, the consumer experience in every market, right, but also in education, is that there's a place to go, either, Microsoft's Copilot, or, Google's ChatGPT, and there's Claude, and like X's AI, and just tons, right? You type something in, it could be like a page long, like all the stuff you want with frameworks, and make sure to include this and blah, 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 blah. And it spits this stuff out. If you're in the paid version, it actually does a better job, and it gives your images that you wanted quicker and things like that. But it's essentially text. Okay. Now that's very different than doing something that's going to be on the screen for the kids to look at, that is maybe animated and it's interactive. They can put their little finger on the screen and move things around to demonstrate that they're understanding what's going on. It's almost gamified. It's guiding the eyeballs in a certain way. I know that you guys don't even use words like language to
Mhm.
teach math in the way that you embody the instructional design, like in a gamified type way.
Yeah.
You can't build that with AI. AI is text versus like Minecraft level stuff. Like it's fully immersive environment. So when you're saying environment, I just want people to get the picture in their mind. You're not talking about soft rugs on the floor. You're talking about the digital experience, which is very high quality user interface, user design. It's on the level of the difference between the old brick phones we used to use and a real iPhone, which a 2-year-old can figure out,
Yeah.
right? That's the difference, right?
Well, and I would
And
actually
and
push
it's
even on
two
that.
worlds. It's two totally different worlds.
So I would actually push even on that. Like, I actually do think like soft rugs are important. But nobody's asked the question, can curriculum create culture? And so, there has been this push that, we got to get a little bit away from the digital space. But what if the digital space actually informs the physical space that's in the classroom? And so, what I mean by that is when someone's learning language, there is this natural feedback loop that happens and we can't prevent it. So, like when a kid is learning to speak, they will bumble through words. And as the parent, you listen really intently and you understand what they say, and then you repeat it back properly to them. And you don't, like, no one trains a parent to do this. A parent just naturally does this. They just do it because they know the kid needs feedback. They know they need to hear it the proper way. So they're creating all these like really rich feedback loops. And this is why a kid,
Yeah.
before they even get to school, learns the very incredible task of speaking and enunciating and speaking really clearly and communicating ideas. So like that's a really big, powerful task that's happening. And then we continue that inside of the literacy space. Now, with math, we don't see a lot of that. We see actually almost none of that. So, one of the things that we have done with our curriculum is that kids actually experience the curriculum. They're getting these really fast, rich feedback loops, both verbally from their peers and their teacher, but also from the actual curriculum itself. As they play, they garner this same exact type of feedback. And in doing that, what you naturally create is this conversive environment where kids are talking about math, and you're doing it by first letting them experience it. Just like the same way when a kid's learning to talk, first they try to talk and then we correct them. So we're teaching post effort, not pre effort. And so what happens typically in the classroom is we will teach pre-effort and then the kids now try to like do what the teacher did, and of course you're not going to do it as good, so you're less likely to take the risk in doing it because
Okay.
the teacher did it
Okay.
first. So you're like, oh well, and so when we talk about AI, most of the way that we're seeing AI use is, oh, we're going to personalize content for the student. Well, the very first personalization that should happen long before we change content for each student is the pace of the content should first be the apparatus of individual attainment or individual change for the student. So like, again, for instance, if I'm coaching people to run that have never run, the activity is not, okay, well, let's do a different activity other than running. No, the activity that you're going to do is run, but you're going to run at a much slower pace than someone who has been running for years. So the first change that is made to individualize content for students should actually be the pace of the content. And that is not how we see AI getting used in any way, shape, or form. However, I will
No.
tell you that's how we use AI. We alter the pace and the feedback loop that the student is experiencing. This is the proper way to leverage or personalize content is first changing pace. Does all that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. It's like first personalize and then present. That makes total sense. But I think what we're really painting a picture here of is that the market is used to every teacher has always been taught to that they're going to be standing in front of a whole group.
Mhm.
And now for I don't know, the last 15 years, there's been this heavy push personalized for everyone. And teachers are facing a mixed ability classroom, which means on average in the United States, if there's 30 kids in that classroom, 10 of them are not at the same grade level point. Maybe a couple of them are ahead, the rest of them are way behind, and they might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grades behind. Like they can't read, but they're ninth grade, or can't do any math in their ninth grade. Um, that's really hard on a teacher. So in my experience, what they're doing is they've been presented with like their ninth grade curriculum. That's what the school bought for them, and they did like teachers did 50 years ago, and they're like, well, I'm not going to use chapter 3, 4, 5, but I'm going to use the other chapter. So essentially they're piecemealing their way forward anyway, doing different lessons, but they're doing it for the normed group. These other 10 who are all at different points, they end up having to be customized for because the teacher doesn't even have anything for them and they're not used to teaching those different grades. So then they go to AI and they like throw something together. That's really what's going on right now. And then there's some other uses like, I'm going to give assignments and have you to use AI to do it. And some of the companies are like, we'll envelope that and show you what the kid used it for a prompt. And then you can, analyze the prompt, not just the response, that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
But what I'm really saying here is that the proper curriculum, right, that you want to give people is already flexing to multiple grades. And I believe that that's sort of the attitude that you guys have taken. So talk to me about that a little bit.
So like I am not like if a kid's like 4 grade levels below, like obviously I'm not arguing against like changing, not like you should change the content for that kid, of course. But
Yes.
the overwhelming majority of students can operate on grade level, regardless of what we think as instructors. So again, a great like I love to use language because everyone's talking all the time. A great way to do this is like if you're trying to explain something to someone and they don't understand it, what the
Mhm.
very first thing that you change is not like, okay, well, let me say it in a different way. You repeat it slower.
Like people talking to people that speak a foreign language, they
Right.
still use English and just say it slower.
And you just do this naturally. You don't even think like no one has ever taught anyone that like task, but we all know like that there's this processing. And if someone doesn't understand something, that we should slow the processing down. And so what we know at Mind Research Institute is actually that first thing, like so the overwhelming majority of kids K through 6 can operate on grade level if the content is presented properly. And
Hmm.
the first mechanism we want to do is actually slow that content down. As we notice, like, oh, this kid is struggling. So let's slow the content down. Let's actually let them experience the feedback more efficiently. So that's the first thing. But then the I think the broader idea is as well is when you see your colleague working at a particular clip, you're like, oh wow, I need to like increase my speed. And so we do this naturally as we observe the environment around us. We change what we do. So a curriculum that is like designed to actually first change culture is doing this as well. It is allowing kids to observe one another and make natural comparisons like, oh, you do that, then I could do that. And so what we want to do when we talk about like creating a natural learning environment is creating an environment where the first thing is kids are doing something right away. And so when we build our curriculum, we're saying, okay, kids should be doing right from the start. So they are experiencing tasks, and the tasks should be model focused. And so what I
So
constantly,
just describe one of those. So because this is really an important thing because we're talking about it sort of generically. Like
yeah.
we're
Okay,
talking,
so
so let's say you're teaching fractions in mind education. From my recall, that's like there's a little penguin and then there's the boxes and you have to show with the boxes the right fraction. So describe like one of these puzzles that's digitally animated to me.
okay, so I think it's easier to give you the opposite example, and then we'll work
Okay.
backwards from there. So everyone has
Okay.
experienced the train is moving east at 95 miles an hour, and then there's another train that's moving west, and it's traveling at this particular pace, and they're this far away. When will they meet? And so, like, this is a classic question. Everyone has solved this question. Or another example of this is like you've got a house and there's a ladder leaning against the house, and calculate the angle of a ladder. Both of those are great examples of things that we see. They're in textbooks today. And as an adult, you've never performed either one of those tasks. So the proper response when a kid goes, when am I going to use this? The
Yeah,
proper
like
response
I
is, you're
don't
not
care
going to
about
do
the
it.
angle of the ladder.
Right.
Come
So
on.
what the textbook is doing is they're saying, here's the math. Here's the math that we want to get the kid to. Let's put a context over that math, and that'll make it feel authentic or natural. And in fact, it doesn't feel natural. Instead, what we would say is let's actually have a model or a situation and then say, okay, solve or fix this situation. And naturally, the kid will utilize math to do this. And this
Mm,
is the primary difference in how do we get kids to actually engage? Well, let's have them solve meaningful problems and use math to do that. So there's like this common vernacular we hear people say all the time, like, oh, math is cool because it's the universal language. Well, we use language to describe things, and no one on earth would say, hey, you got to do the English, because that is
yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. You don't do the English, you use the English. And so
yeah,
with math, we hear do the math all the time. And what we're saying is actually, you should use the math. And when you use the math to solve problems, that creates a different environment for students, an environment that they then feel the autonomy to actually solve the problem however they think is most effective. Now, they might have an effective way of solving a problem that is inefficient. And now this is where we get to work as educators, is now I get to say, okay, is there a more efficient way to do that? Look at your colleague. Look how they did it. And now the kid starts to imagine like, oh, well, there actually is a better way to do this. And we actually start moving kids to the efficiency of utilizing mathematics. And so
right.
when I like, it's really difficult to describe our puzzles because as an adult, we have experienced doing the math our whole life. And what we're saying is actually we're going to use the math. And so it's really difficult for me to actually, explain a puzzle,
Yeah, like
show
this
it
is
to
a
you.
different world. I think
Um,
many of the things that you said, like, are taking people in a different world. Like, if you're out there teaching math right now, you're like, what? I think what I'd say to anybody that's teaching math, you have to experience this. You have to understand this is a different thing than handing out like worksheets to show your work on for math. Like, this is totally not that. That's like, that's the moon and we're on Earth right
well,
now.
you said
All
something,
right, so
and I hold on before you go on. So you said that, and I say this all the time to try to get people to wrap their head. Like it's like they're entering a different world. So if you have a kid practice soccer, the most realistic soccer practice would be for us to say, okay, let's get Ronaldo, and Ronaldo is going to play scrimmage with these kids and just like totally crush them, and like that is the most real world version of soccer. But that's ineffective as far as getting a kid to learn how to play soccer. The kids essentially enter soccer practice and we create a whole new world for them. We'll put cones out and we'll say dribble between the cones. And the kids do not complain about this. It doesn't feel inauthentic to them because what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, you had me enter a new world. I accept those rules and I'll operate inside those rules. And what we have effectively done with ST Math and Insight Math with Mind Education is we say, okay, let's create a whole new world and let's create our own little rules in this world. And the kids accept that premise and then start operating inside that. And the only way to do that is actually to create culture. And so the big thing with ST Math and Insight Math is like, we're going to build a whole new culture, a whole new environment that the kids then operate inside of. And so rather than also saying, okay, here's all this technology that you can use with our curriculum, what we have said is actually, let's take all of that thinking away from the teacher. Let's bake the technology into the curriculum so it's happening and it's built as one uniform thing rather than saying, here's our curriculum and you can use all these other resources. No, let's actually
Right.
just
I
make
think
it
that's a
simple.
huge disconnect in the market,
Mhm.
right? People are, I mean, technically, most of the tools in the market for a long, long time have been like add-ons.
Mhm.
They were thought of as remedial. Like this kid's not getting it. Let's go stick him in that software program in the back of the room with some headphones on, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how you think that way any longer, though. If you're an educator listening to this podcast right now, I don't know. I don't understand you because if you're using an iPhone, you have to be able to understand that this is a different world. And also that the younger generation, particularly Generation Alpha, they are 100% living in that world. And if you're not presenting interactivity in a digital way, then and you're still trying to stand and deliver at the front of the classroom or to hand out worksheets, I don't know what you're thinking, right? Like I don't get it, right? So,
Well, yeah, and I
anyways,
think
that's where
everyone understands that. The question is like, why are the resources not being built? Like a great example of this is the smartboard. The smartboard is absolutely incredible. And if anyone's ever been to a demo of a smartboard, you're like, oh my gosh, this thing does so much. Walk into a classroom with a smartboard. None of that stuff happens because it's not baked into the curriculum. It's not, and there's too many tools at the exact same time. So the teacher's like, well, which one do I use? What we have done is said, okay, well, let's take all of that like smart board type technology. Let's take all of that AI technology. And rather than just say, look at all this stuff that's available, let's actually integrate it into the curriculum so that it only shows up when you're supposed to use it. And that is a wildly different thing that allows the teacher to do less cognitive thinking about which resource do I use and when do I use it, and more thinking about, well, here's the resource. I'm going to use it now. What I'm mostly focused on is watching my students.
well, now you've done it, Dan. Now you've talked about the reality of what technology should be doing, really, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been in a market bazaar of tools, right? As add-ons to what you were already doing, right? When in reality, what technology should be doing is going, listen, your job is like 50 different roles as a teacher. Everyone knows this, everyone knows they're all overwhelmed. Rather than give you another tool, let's give you an end-to-end solution, right? Like where here it is, and let's just train you on it. I know that's irritating to have to be trained on something else, but here you go. Now, use it. Just ride this, right? Like let's just do this. And now what that allows you to do as a teacher, and this people fail to think about this, that allows you to be human, right? Like let's just let technology let you be more human, right? Like because that's really the quality people want. They want as a student, they want to have the teacher come over and notice that they're struggling and the student to be able to verbalize this is what's happening with me, right? You know, and then blah blah blah. And then the teacher just says, yeah, I understand. Well, like try again, right? Like I know you can do it. Like that's really all you got to do, right? Like if that was the role of a teacher, people would be swarming to the be teachers right now. Instead, it's like 50 different jobs. So what you're saying is what your company's done is you've stepped in to say, let's take a load off. Come on, people. Did you know how magical the digital realm can be? Like, let's do this thing, right? So I love that you said that. So I have one other thing that I really want to bring up with you. Um, so your AI driven systems are helping you in the mixed ability classroom, it's not an afterthought. I just want to bring that up again because this is a really huge problem all across America. They have a huge absenteeism. They have mixed ability. We've got 250 languages now in America that people have to service in schools all over the place. People just got here from somewhere else, it's a big thing. So talk to me about what that means, right? Like to be able to use a program that is already, it's got some built-in features.
So like the built-in is like it's happening and you don't do anything with it. And that is like the key for an educator. The AI is in the space. It is determining pacing for students. It's determining feedback loops for students without you touching it and doing anything with it. So there's not like this, oh, how do I use this? No. Like you mentioned, like, oh, we got to train teachers. But what if the training for the teachers was, hey, just use the curriculum?
Turn it on, push the button, just come on.
And then it's like, then you teach. Here's the curriculum and you teach with it. For years, like, so 1/3 of students leave school proficient in math. Proficiency, extremely low bar. Like we should
Yeah.
all be upset by that. But you've never seen in a news article that said, well, this school district's got terrible proficiency. They better change their curriculum. No, it's always like, why? What's wrong with the teachers? What's wrong? Well, okay, well that's a
Drives me
problem.
nuts.
Like that's
That
insane.
drives me nuts, right?
So
Literally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what we know is like culture is what is the problem. And culture obviously starts with the family, but like, I cannot, we're not going to change every single family, but what we can do is change the culture of our schools through the thing that the students interact with the most, which is the curriculum. And this should be the charge of every single curriculum is change the school culture. And you're going to do that by having kids have a completely different experience with math. And so we want them to actually have this do first activities where they're actually engaged in doing things. The teachers then just like a guide. Like, so the greatest, I mean, I think Maria Montessori said, like, the greatest sign of a successful teacher is the ability, or is if they're able to say, like, the child is now working as if I do not exist. Like that is a great picture of a classroom where kids are just engaged in thinking. They're engaged in this culture. The culture itself is naturally forming them. So like this is why like, you wear the clothes you wear because you're in American culture. If you lived in India, you would wear different clothes, not because you're like, I need to wear. No, the culture itself would press that upon you. And this is what we want to do. It's the culture is the difference between 30% of students proficient and 100%. Is we want that
Right.
culture to push down onto students to where they're like the expectation is, of course, I'm going to be really good at math because that's what the culture demands of me. And the way we want
Right.
to do that is through these learning environments, these natural learning environments that we're going to create by reducing the load on the teacher by saying, hey, you don't need to worry about the tools because when you need the tool, it will be available to you. You don't need to worry about how to play this game because when it comes time, it will be there for you. And your
Okay, so I want to come back to one other point then, because I think we started out with like it's AI versus instructional excellence, right? Like, and the AI people know right now is the chatbotting and the image generation that's actually kind of not very good. Um, it's getting better, right? But
Mhm.
it's that world versus the truly digitally crafted world, I would say. It's like you said, learning experience. But one of the other key points, and I don't think we said this yet, is that math is a visual phenomena and it doesn't require words. And I know that the science of that is something that you guys have thought about. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So again, I'm just going to talk because every teacher knows this. So what's happened with curriculum is we've tried to get this like inquiry base where kids discover the math, right? Almost like there's like, we're going back to like how Archimedes discovered the math. Like we want the kids to discover the math the same way. Well, okay, well,
Right.
let's go back to when that math was discovered. What did they do? It was all visuals. Everything they were doing is they were just observing noticing and then starting to like paint a bigger, broader picture and then try to algorithmize that picture. So what we know is if we actually start with visuals, and I'm not just talking, it's like every visual is not the same. Here's the visual, and now this visual is meant to be solved or worked upon. The visual is not representing the math. The visual drives you to mathematical thinking. Those are different. And so what we are doing is we're saying, here's the visual, and this visual will drive you to mathematical thinking because we're going to give you feedback based on how you operate on this visual. We're going to give you paced feedback based on how you perform as you operate on this visual. So the visual first mechanism is how we're going to learn because 90% of the information that you acquire is visual. So why would we not immediately start leveraging that really powerful thing? And that's also why, like, if you've noticed this whole entire podcast, I'm talking in analogies because those are word pictures. I'm giving
Right.
the listener visuals just through language, and that is really powerful.
Good. Good. I like this. Okay, so what we're really saying is that the way that we've been teaching math for many, many years has been a more of a whole group, not really very visual, bunch of worksheets, assignments, working through textbooks, sometimes now using AI, but not necessarily this highly crafted stuff. So I'm just making sure I end off with this podcast saying, like, you need to see this, you need to understand it, because if you're trying to go down and this other road, uh, it may not be as effective as what you really want to do in teaching math, right? What you really want to do is engage them and actually have them using math, like you said. So, final thoughts.
Lilani, you don't even have to say it may not be as effective. It is not as effective. We know this. We've got thousands, like we got hundreds of years of proof of this. Of like it is not
Yeah.
effective. It doesn't. And we all know that teachers want something different. Like so, it's not even like I wouldn't even like put it on the teachers. They just fall to that by default because the culture demands it. So what we
Hmm.
need to do is demand new curriculums that build a different culture.
Yeah, I love this visual that you just gave me because, yeah, so the whole profession of teaching has been whole group, stand and deliver for centuries, and always the subject of math was wounded from that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I understand now. Well, this has been delightful. Thank you very much. And thank you to our listeners. This has been another episode of Learning Council's podcast with your host, me, Leilani Cawthon, and my good friend Dan Tracy from Mind Education. Look them up and keep listening, keep learning.